The courtroom was packed. People whispered among themselves, waiting for what seemed like just another routine case. At the center of it all stood a young teenager, barely old enough to drive, dressed in a hoodie and jeans. He looked nervous, unsure, completely out of place in the formal world of law and order. Across the room, the judge, an older man known for his harsh tone and short temper, leaned forward with a smirk. He tapped his gavel and shook his head in disbelief. "Looks like someone wandered into the wrong room," the judge said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The courtroom chuckled quietly, feeding off the judge's sarcasm. You could feel the tension, the way eyes rolled and minds were already made up. After all, what business would a teenager have standing alone in front of a judge? He must be another troubled kid, maybe trying to defend himself in a case he clearly had no hope of winning. But there was something different about this boy. He didn't flinch. He didn't mumble or look away. Instead, he took a deep breath, opened his folder and started speaking. At first, people weren't listening, until he used legal terms with precision, quoted actual cases from memory, and began challenging the prosecution with confidence no one expected. The mood in the room shifted, eyes widened. The smirk slowly faded from the judge's face. Who was this kid? How did he know the law so well? And more importantly, why was he standing there representing himself when no one had taken him seriously just minutes earlier? What started as a courtroom joke was quickly turning into something no one saw coming. This teenager wasn't just smart, he was brilliant, and the judge who mocked him. About to be taught a lesson he'd never forget. But what happens next will leave you stunned. That's a strong and captivating intro. If you're looking for feedback, it already nails the tone, suspense, and human element really well. But if you're asking me to revise or enhance it further, just slightly to tighten the flow and rhythm without changing the core message, here's a lightly refined version you can consider. The courtroom was full, buzzing with low whispers as people waited for what seemed like another routine case. At the center stood a teenager, barely old enough to drive, dressed in a hoodie and jeans. He looked out of place, nervous, like he didn't belong in the world of suits and legal talk. Across the room, the judge, a stern man with a sharp tongue, leaned forward with a smirk. He tapped his gavel, clearly amused. "Looks like someone wandered into the wrong room," the judge said, loud enough for the whole court to hear. A few quiet laughs followed. You could feel the judgment in the air. People had already made up their minds. A teenager standing alone in court. Most assumed it was another sad story waiting to be wrapped up. But then something unexpected happened. The boy didn't shrink back. He didn't mumble or fumble through his words. He calmly opened a folder and began to speak. At first, no one paid much attention, until he started using sharp legal language, citing actual cases from memory, and picking apart the prosecution's argument with precision. One by one, heads turned. The energy in the room shifted. The judge's smirk began to fade. People were no longer laughing. They were stunned. Who was this kid? How did he know the law so well? And why was he standing there, representing himself like he belonged? What had started as a courtroom mockery was quickly becoming something extraordinary. This teen wasn't just smart, he was brilliant. And the judge, about to be humbled in a way no one saw coming. But what happens next takes the story to a whole new level. Let me know if you want me to continue the story for your video or shape it for voiceover narration style. The judge leaned back slightly, clearly taken off guard. The courtroom had gone quiet. Even the prosecution began flipping through their notes, suddenly unsure of how prepared they really were. The teenager stood tall, confidently outlining points most law school students would struggle to deliver under pressure. Every sentence was sharp, backed with references to real cases and legal procedures. People began whispering again, but now the tone was different, curious, surprised, even impressed. The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "And who exactly prepared you for this, young man?" he asked, his voice now a mix of curiosity and caution. The teen looked him straight in the eye, "I did, Your Honor." The room was stunned once again. No one could wrap their head around how someone so young, with no formal legal training, was holding his own in such a high-stakes environment. As the case unfolded, things got even more complicated. It wasn't just that he was smart. He knew things about the system, about how it worked and how it didn't work. He started exposing flaws in the case against him, hinting at misconduct, missing evidence, and shady backdoor deals that no one was supposed to notice. Some of the people in the courtroom, especially those who worked in law, started to shift uncomfortably. He was shining a light on things no one wanted to talk about. It wasn't just about his case anymore. It was about something bigger. A system that often fails the very people it claims to protect. A kid who was supposed to be a nobody had suddenly become a mirror, forcing the courtroom to look at itself. Meanwhile, a few journalists who happened to be present began taking notes more seriously. The quiet buzz started to grow outside the courtroom too, as word spread about the teen genius attorney turning heads in court. But not everyone was happy. The prosecution seemed tense. Whispers suggested they were hiding something. Even the judge, now more reserved, kept glancing at someone in the back of the room, a man in a suit who hadn't spoken a word yet, but whose presence felt heavy. Something else was going on beneath the surface, something much bigger than a single courtroom case. And the teenager, he wasn't done yet. As the teenager continued laying out his case, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted from surprise to disbelief. No one had expected a moment like this, not from someone his age, and certainly not from someone who came in looking like he didn't belong. He wasn't just defending himself anymore. He was pulling back the curtain on something far more serious. Every new point he made revealed cracks in the prosecution's story, and those cracks were starting to spread. The judge, who had mocked him at the start, now watched in silence. His gavel rested untouched. His expression was harder to read, less arrogant, more unsettled. It wasn't just about being challenged in his courtroom. It was about what was being uncovered right in front of him. The teenager presented a printed document next. It was a timeline, detailed and backed with phone logs, witness names, and even an email thread. He held it up for the court to see, his voice calm but steady. "I'd like to enter this into evidence," he said, "because it shows who actually knew what and when." Murmurs spread again. A few heads turned toward the man sitting in the back, the one in the expensive-looking suit who hadn't said a word since the trial began. He still didn't move, but there was a flicker in his eyes. The teen looked straight at him this time, his tone sharp. "You were hoping this would get buried, weren't you?" The judge shot the man a glance, clearly uneasy. That man wasn't part of the prosecution or the defense. Yet somehow, his presence had carried weight in that courtroom the entire time. The journalists took note of the shift. The camera crew, which had mostly been still, now focused their lenses on the unfolding drama. The prosecution objected, trying to dismiss the document. "This is irrelevant," they claimed, but their voices shook slightly. It was clear they weren't as confident as they had been at the start. The teenager didn't back down. "If it's irrelevant," he said, "then why does it explain exactly why I was set up?" Gasps rippled through the room. Suddenly, this wasn't just a trial. It was a bomb waiting to go off. Evidence tampering, possible corruption, hidden motives. Everything was on the table now. The tension was thick. The truth felt close, but just out of reach. And then the man in the suit finally stood up. The room went silent. The man in the suit slowly stepped forward, his footsteps echoing through the courtroom like distant thunder. Every eye followed him. Even the judge seemed unsure of what was about to happen. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. From the way the prosecution stiffened and the judge sat a little straighter, it was clear this wasn't just some spectator. He was someone with power, and for the first time, he looked directly at the teenager, his expression cold but calculated. "I think that's enough," he said quietly but firmly, His voice carried the kind of authority that doesn't come from being elected, it comes from being feared. The judge hesitated, visibly torn between court procedure and the presence of a man who clearly wasn't used to being told no. But the teen didn't blink. He stepped forward too, standing his ground. "With all due respect," the boy replied, "this isn't your courtroom. And the truth doesn't stop just because someone important feels uncomfortable." The man smirked. "You're clever, too clever for your own good." And that's when it hit everyone. This wasn't just about the teenager's case anymore. This was something deeper, something bigger. Corruption, influence, power plays, things no one had expected to be dragged into the light by a kid who hadn't even finished high school. The stakes had officially changed. The conflict wasn't just about proving his innocence. It was now about exposing a system that had been rigged from the start. Then came the second twist. The teenager pulled out one final document from his folder. It wasn't part of the original evidence. This one had a signature, asterisk his own name, asterisk next to a timestamp that didn't make sense. He held it up for the room to see. "This is the contract they used to shut me up," he said. "The one I was never supposed to sign, but somehow did." The courtroom froze. A forged document? A fake confession? The crowd began to buzz again. Now it wasn't just about justice. It was about betrayal, control, and a cover-up that went deeper than anyone expected. The judge looked pale. The man in the suit narrowed his eyes. And outside, reporters were already dialing their editors. Inside that courtroom, the battle wasn't over. It was just getting started. The courtroom held its breath. For a long moment, no one moved. The forged document in the teenager's hand was the final crack in the dam. The judge, who had started the day with smug jokes and eye rolls, now stared at the paper in disbelief. He took off his glasses slowly, rubbed his temples, and looked like he'd just realized how far off track this trial had gone. The prosecution team whispered in panic, clearly blindsided. The man in the suit stood silent, his face unreadable, but there was tension in his jaw, the kind that comes from losing control. The teen walked confidently to the clerk and handed over the document. "Check the timestamp," he said. "I was in school when they claimed I signed this. Cameras, attendance records, eyewitnesses. I've got it all." The clerk took it. The judge nodded slowly, then looked toward the prosecution. "Do you have an explanation for this?" he asked. They didn't. Their lead attorney sat frozen, unable to speak. One of the junior prosecutors quietly stood up, trembling. "Your Honor, I wasn't supposed to say anything, but I saw them editing the document before the hearing." Gasps filled the room. The judge's eyes widened. Even the man in the suit blinked, his composure breaking for just a moment. That was the turning point. The courtroom was no longer a stage for power plays. It became a reckoning. The judge called for an immediate recess. Security was asked to escort the prosecution team out. Reporters rushed to file breaking news. And the teenager? He sat down quietly, hands shaking just slightly for the first time. The battle had been brutal, but the truth had finally won. But just as things began to settle, one final twist slipped through the cracks. As the courtroom cleared, the teenager noticed something in the folder the junior prosecutor had left behind. A photo. It was old, a bit blurry, but unmistakable. It was him, as a child, standing with the man in the suit, a hand on his shoulder, smiling. He stared at it, heart racing. What did it mean? Why was this powerful man connected to him? The case was over. The truth had come out. But now, a new mystery had just begun. The courtroom had cleared, but the teenager remained in his seat, staring at the photo. His mind raced through memories he had long buried. That man, the one in the suit, had visited his foster home years ago. He wasn't just some high-ranking official. He had once been a mentor, someone who promised to help him, then disappeared without a trace. Now he understood. This wasn't just about a case. It was personal. Somewhere along the way, the man had become part of a system built to silence people like him, to erase potential threats before they even had a chance to rise. Outside, news vans lined the courthouse steps. Headlines were already spreading. Asterisk teen outsmarts legal system. Asterisk prosecution caught falsifying evidence. Asterisk corruption in the courtroom exposed asterisk. But none of that mattered to the boy as much as the truth he had uncovered for himself. He hadn't just cleared his name, he had faced a system meant to break him and walked out stronger. The judge returned moments later. His tone was different now, quiet, almost respectful. "Son," he said, "I owe you an apology. You've done what most grown men wouldn't dare try." The teen nodded, accepting the words but not needing them. He hadn't come for praise, he had come for justice. A few weeks later, the case was officially dismissed. The prosecutors involved were placed under investigation, and reforms in courtroom oversight began to take shape, spurred by the public pressure the case had created. The teen received dozens of offers from law schools and legal organizations eager to support his future. But he didn't rush into anything. Instead, he went home, sat with the photo once more, and made a decision. He wasn't done. If anything, this was just the beginning. He knew now that he had a voice, and more importantly, he knew how to use it. This wasn't just a story about a courtroom twist or a brilliant teen who outsmarted adults. It was about truth, resilience, and the power of standing up when no one else believes in you. And while the world moved on to the next headline, one thing was clear: this young man's fight had sparked something far bigger than a single verdict.